Hi guys. Today we're going to talk about just specifically the supply curve in the free trade diagram because it's probably a little bit different than what you're used to. It takes just a bit of, like I say, rethinking just to make sure that you're getting it right. Keep in mind that the supply curve is going to be made up of two other things or two other supply curves. And always it's going to be made up of the supply curve that produces the product at the lowest cost. So the question is always, well, does the domestic supply curve produce that quantity at a lower cost? Or does the world supply curve produce that quantity at a lower cost? We are talking marginally here. We're saying the first unit, who produces it cheapest? The second unit, who produces it cheapest? So on, so on, so on. When we look at the diagram, it's real easy. You notice here I don't even have a demand curve in here. It's real easy to do the analysis if we look at the domestic supply curve and then look at the world supply curve. Remember, we make this assumption that the world supply curve is this sort of infinity, right? We're assuming that the world can supply so much of this good that increases in demand from the country are only a drop in the bucket, therefore they don't affect the overall price of supply from the world. Again, a good example of that is if you think of, the amount of grain, the amount of wheat that the world is able to produce. If there's an increase of demand for wheat in a small country like Lesotho, that's not going to have any effect on the world's price of wheat because the world can produce so much of it already that the increased demand, it's like if I were to go up to the swimming pool and pour a glass of water in it. Yeah, technically there would be more water in the swimming pool, but it won't have affected the level, how deep the swimming pool is really in any noticeable way. So that's how we have to think of supply in this context. So when we start over here at 0 and again ask the question, well, who's going to produce the first unit? Well, we see the lowest price is here on the domestic supply curve. The world supply curve is way up here, so domestically this product can be produced more affordably, more effectively, more efficiently. That remains true until these two supply curves intersect. So everything from this point to the left is going to be produced by the domestic suppliers, and everything from this point to the right is going to be produced by the world suppliers. We can sort of do this if it makes it easier. And remember that this part of the world supply curve, effectively, it doesn't matter. If domestic demand for this product is right here, just like this, well, there would be no importing of this good because the domestic suppliers could satisfy that demand. Likewise, we can sort of get rid of all of this up here because after that point, after this point right here, Q1 I suppose, it doesn't really matter what the domestic suppliers can do. After this point, the world suppliers can produce this product at a cheaper price and they can continue to essentially to infinity. So then we have to answer the question of where is equilibrium or market price? We'll go ahead and diagram this. It's not completed yet, so let's go ahead and have a look. Remember, if we're talking about normal demand and supply, well, if here's my demand curve, all we're looking for, of course, is where does the supply curve run into it? And of course, we're going to have equilibrium there and there. If it's the free trade diagram, though, we get this different sort of supply curve. We get this first segment, which is from the domestic suppliers, and then we get this second segment, which is from the world suppliers. So we get this kind of kinked supply curve. Don't confuse that with the kinked demand curve, different ideas. But we get this supply curve that has this kind of funny shape. And again, remember, it's perfectly elastic, basically to infinity. Okay? So again, here, the equilibrium quantity is going to be there, and whatever the world price was will be the equilibrium price. Now, it's not really something that we study a lot, but I think there's an interesting point to be made here. What if demand does change? What if we experience an increase in demand for whatever good we're looking at? Well, again, interesting to note, if we go back to our normal analysis, well then we can see that an increase in demand, of course, is going to drive up price. But again, this is just in a small market. This is our standard micro analysis. If we look at it here in the free trade model, well, you notice that this increase of demand actually has no effect on the price inside of the country. Okay? And again, keep in mind, the world price, I guess I didn't say it over here, the world price is going to be the price that these domestic these domestic suppliers, they're going to, of course, charge the world price. Remember here, these suppliers who can supply at a cheaper rate, they don't actually sell it at this rate. They're, of course, going to sell it at the equilibrium price. In this, that's really easy and no one ever gets confused. We understand all these suppliers will sell at whatever P star is. For some reason, though, people get confused here, and there's no reason for that. Again, whatever the equilibrium price is, it'll be P world, but whatever it is, all the suppliers will sell for that price. So coming back over here, again, the point is that no matter what happens to demand, if there's a sudden increase or anything, the world price isn't going to change. And again, it's this idea of there being an infinite supply. And again, I think it's good for you to think about this idea of, going up to the swimming pool and pouring a glass of water in there. You're not going to change the amount of water in that pool. Yeah, sure, a little bit, but it's so insignificant that it doesn't matter.